All right, and
Well,
I think we are ready.
Public service announcement. After the session, all these sessions are recorded. It's going to be on Channel 9 and stuff, so definitely go watch the stuff if we ran through something really quickly. All right, Jennifer, ladies first.
Well, let's get started. So we're in proven ways to build robust no-code solutions in Microsoft SharePoint. We were going for the longest title that you could come up with. But my name is Jennifer Mason. I work at Rackspace Hosting. I've been working with them on their new Office 365 offering. So I really spend a lot of time helping users understand what they can be doing with technology, helping them understand, do we need to do this dedicated on-prem? Do we need to do this in the cloud? How should we go about doing it? My common tagline is I'm allergic to semicolons and syntax. So everything I do is out of the box, point and click, just anything you can do with SharePoint out of the box. And so that's where kind of my solution areas focus into. And so my information is here. I'm super easy to find. I will be around the expo hall all day, running around, easy to find. So just stop me and ask any questions if you have them. And
awesome. And I'm Jennifer, the Score Presenter. That's how I introduce myself usually, Jennifer, Score Presenter. Name is Asif Rahmani. Like I said, I'm a local Chicagoan. So once again, those people who came in a little late, welcome to Chicago. What I do personally as an individual, been speaking, doing these kind of conferences and training and just trying to empower people on SharePoint for a long time. Because this is a platform, right? There's so much good stuff you could do with it. And there's, unfortunately, bad stuff as well that you can do with it. So I try to keep people away from bad stuff, write about it and all. Anyway, that's what I do as an individual, as a company. We make just-in-time learning on SharePoint. So there's something called a Visual SP Help System. Check it out if you want. If you're looking for ending the chaotic support calls from your end users, something that we have might help you. It's the Visual SP Help System. We have a booth out there as well. If you come by, we'll have a chat. That's about it. Let's get started.
Very cool. All right, well, we're going to talk about the session parameters first. We are building no-code solutions. So if you are wanting us to open Visual Studio and hit any button called compile, then you're going to be very, very disappointed. So now is your opportunity to kind of go find those developers and go to one of those sessions. This is all no-code solutions. We're looking for solutions that are quick and inexpensive, but very useful to the business. So we want to be building these solutions, taking SharePoint, Office 365, all of the components out of the box as far as we can, so that we can build these powerful solutions. We're usually looking to solve a common business need when we do it. So it's a small department or a group of people that's trying to do things together, and they want to do it more efficiently. They want to do it more creatively. They want to take advantage of these technologies. But you know, a lot of times these solutions aren't necessarily the overall focus of the organization. So getting a developer to come in and do it, the resources wouldn't really be aligned with the rest of the organization. So these are powerful solutions. They're still great, in many cases, very business critical solutions, but they're built by the business and for the business in most cases. There's a couple of different names for them: SharePoint composites, mashups. There's all sorts of different things that these are called. And then we also wanted to talk about who are the power users. So power users is one of those terms that gets defined differently by almost everyone that you talk to about it. And so it really doesn't matter what you call them or how you use them, but that's what, I mean, it's a concept of someone who has technical expertise. So they're usually, I like to say, when you're looking to identify these power users and who are the power users that have potential to go out and build these great solutions, it's usually somebody that's gone crazy in Excel. Do any of you guys have users like that they have built stuff in Excel and you just kind of walk away and you're like, what made you even think to build out this entire app with pages and it looks like these forms? I've run into many of them. Have you run into those?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're fun. They have this technical expertise. They kind of understand the technology. They understand what buttons should I be pushing and how can I pull all of these things together. But they also understand the business. They're very close to the business, so they're able to recognize, here's a problem that we're trying to solve within the business, and now I can pull this technology set together to use it. But they're not typically someone who does coding for a living. So they're just someone who's building solutions as part of their day-to-day job because it's their job to make the business better, to be part of the business and do that, but they're not necessarily somebody that can do it. Now, again, these are all generalizations. This does not mean that this applies to every company, because there are some companies that have one person that is just completely their job to do nothing but build out no-code solutions. So these are just kind of summarizations of the entire industry, so it's not going to necessarily align with everyone. They're also called different titles: power users, citizen developers, business unit IT people. There's probably other names. Can you think of other names of what these are called?
No, it's pretty much it.
But it doesn't really matter what you call them. But they're majorly essential to your business and your organization. And SharePoint in itself of a framework is just a great tool to empower them to build out solutions. And so even starting as early as 2001, going to 2007, 2010, and then even in 2013, as we're going now from 2013 and we're transitioning to Office 365 and seeing the new features, our landscape is changing a little bit. And so I think over the next couple of years, this is going to be a very interesting spot to watch and see what happens. From things like the next generation portals and different things like that, Infopedia. Did anyone go to the next generation portal session yesterday? That is a very good one for this audience. Mark Cashman and Adam Hammett gave it yesterday, and they gave information. It'd be great to catch on the Channel 9 video and watch up for the future of next gen portals. But, all right. Here we go.
All right, Jennifer.
I'm going to let you click.
Okay, I'll click. True story. A few years ago, a person came to my class, developer. I was teaching a no-code class. After the class, told me, man, I wish I knew what you told me this week before, like 6 months ago, because I was using this big hammer called Visual Studio, and I was trying to solve all my problems this way. That big hammer is extremely necessary, but not all the time. Right? Many times you could do a lot of stuff out of the box, no-code solutions. That's what we want to show you guys, give you some ideas, get you a jump start. So having said that, there's a customization continuum that I just want to quickly go through, talk a little bit more about that. In my humble opinion, we both agree, you want to start with what is the building block that's already there, which is lists, libraries, documents, stuff like that, and build from that. And that's kind of like moving furniture around at your house and making things look pretty. This sofa goes here, this table goes here, etc., right? After that, you jump into declarative capabilities, such as ECM, WCM, search capabilities, and stuff like that. We'll be showing you about, hopefully if we have time, search web parts and what you can do with them, for example. A lot of good stuff you can do directly through the browser. Look into that. After that, well actually, so this analogous to just building something but building it quickly. Then you get into a little bit more complex stuff, and this is where I reside more as to, I don't want to touch code, I don't want to do compile code, even though I was a developer before. I feel a lot of stuff that I used to do the hard way, we could do it the easy way. So what is available to me? Things like workflows, things like form capabilities, right? Those kind of things, plus Power View, Dashboard Designer, Report Builder. There's so many tools like that out there which you can use to build your solutions, end-to-end lifecycle solutions. And that's where things get a little bit more complicated. Still, it's not as custom, right? Then comes the evil code developers. I'm just kidding. I'm very much kidding, by the way. I think coding is extremely needed when you do things. So building apps, client-side object model, reusable components, all that stuff is extremely necessary, but not in all cases. You can save a lot of time doing things without code. It's easier to delegate that stuff as well to power users, not end users, but power users. It's also easier to change the actual functionality when the requirements change, which they always do right after you're done with the project, right? All right, so I'm not taking too much time here. Let me ask you a question here, Jennifer. Where do you see yourself fitting in?
I am completely out of the box. So I like to rearrange furniture and move things around. Occasionally I'll get into the no-code solutions, but where it's kind of like it's a picture of furniture from IKEA that we're putting together. I'm most likely putting together a small table or a little bookshelf, not an entertainment system. So I typically go very simple solutions, everything we can do out of the box, and then I punt it to the other end. So where do you fit?
Yeah, I see myself specifically going into the no-code solutions and working backwards from there. Meaning, well, of course, understanding and evaluating what I can do and not do out of the box, but usually my customers and stuff that I do is no-code solutions, and then below that. And then, of course, this is what I used to do, the managed code stuff. Well, like I said, extremely necessary, not my cup of tea anymore. We'll be also staying no-code solutions and below in this particular session.
Yeah,
all right,
definitely.
let's get forward because we got a lot to cover.
All right, so we're talking about let's not write code unless we absolutely have to. But there's always a have to, right? So we can go so far out of the box, and then we have to cross over and look at other solutions. And so what's really good as you're working with your developers is to understand how far can I get with what I can do out of the box, and then make wise decisions when you're going to develop. So if you're going back to that last example, if you're putting together a bookshelf and you're holding it together with glue and tape, it's probably better done through custom development. So we still want to be careful and just make wise decisions as we're using these tools to make sure that we're getting the best results for what we have.
Cool.
Case in point, one time I had someone at a conference walk up and say, I'm having problems with a SharePoint designer workflow. Can you help me? And so Laura and I were standing there together, and we're like, yeah, sure, let's look at it. She's like, I printed screenshots of it, which first off, that's difficult. Second off, it was 89 pages. And I was like, okay, well, this might be an example of when, you know, a developer might be a better solution for this. So it's all about balancing and doing those things. And no, we did not find the problem in her stack of 89 pages.
So proud of it. It was just too long. All right.
A lot of work.
Got one more, and then Jennifer's getting ready, meanwhile, to show you a cool demo, some information about Power View stuff. These are just some of the things that we have done before using no-code solutions completely. As I was mentioning before, you know, you're thinking about processes, you're thinking about forms, you're thinking about reporting, you're thinking about all these different areas that you need in most solutions, and everything's available without code. All right? So anyway, this is just a reference for you to take some of these things. You can even query some of these things directly, and you'll see there are solutions out there, videos for how to do an onboarding process or something like that. Go for it, Jennifer.
Awesome. So before we get started on demos, just a couple quick notes. And we were looking and saying, what can we do? If you guys looked through the session content, there wasn't really a lot of sessions for this audience of building no-code solutions. And so we wanted to be sure to give you guys a good variety of things to look at. So we're going to be moving very quickly through several different demos. If you haven't seen these demos before, kind of the purpose is for you to get an idea and to spark an interest in something that you can do moving forward. At the end of each section, when you go get the slides from the site, we have links with additional resources that in many cases walks you through to some tutorials that do it step by step. So even if we're covering things very quickly, we're trying to give you guys resources that you can look at later to do it. So just to kind of level set what the fire hose that we are about to drink from together. Okay. So we're going to start out talking about Power View. Power View has got some really interesting things coming. One thing I know from users is that they love charts and graphs and images that you can click to show data. And so it's getting increasingly easier to do some of these things inside of Excel. One thing I want to show you guys is the Power BI, the beta features that are out right now. This is an Office 365 feature. You can sign up for it with your Office 365 account. The reason I want to show it is because I fully believe that this is the future of where things are going.
I thought we didn't switch. Yeah, we did switch.
Yeah, it's the future of where things are going. And so as we start going forward with Office 365 and we want to have data showing and we want to display different things, this is where it's going to end up. So here I have some charts and I have some graphs and I'm getting some data and I'm able to pull it in from different locations. What's cool about this is new locations are coming. So a lot of times the example that people run into is I want to take my data that's in a SharePoint list and I want to display it in a chart or a graph. So a very common request. Right now that's supported that you can get SharePoint list data, but it doesn't auto refresh, but that's something that's on the roadmap that's coming. So for now, if you wanted to do it, think of it as a weekly report scenario where you'd have to open it once a week and refresh the data and save the report. So that's not fully automated, but in a lot of scenarios, sometimes that extra step is still better than what they were doing before, so you can't necessarily rule that out. But here we have one of the reports, and if I go down to my data sets, I see the different pieces of data that I have. And if I go back, I'm not going to save it because I didn't make any changes, and I go into my reports, here's where I can start making different reports. These are very, very easy to make because you can go in, you can filter them, and then when you're pushing data out there, you just simply have to go in and, you know, if we're coming in and editing a report, you can just go in and change the data sets that are there. You can also very easily change the way the data is displayed. So it's very dynamic and very easy to do, and this data set is coming from a SharePoint list data set. So it's data that's in a SharePoint list. So very simplistic to show and do. Right now it's a separate experience, right? So I'd have to link, and then I'm linking out to the Power BI dashboard. I'm not necessarily inside of Office 365, but still a very cool feature. But you can also use Excel, and you can use some of the Power BI features there and the Power View features to build the reports there. So here I have an Excel file that's data pulling from a SharePoint list. So if I'm in a SharePoint list and I say export to Excel, I now have my data here. I've gone and I've created a Power View page, and I have all of these different reports. Okay? So what can we do with Excel and SharePoint? We can publish it to a document library and then use the Excel Web Access web part to display it. So now I have these charts and graphs, and I can go back to my SharePoint site, and I actually have a page that's showing a dashboard with that information that's there. Of course, the internet, loading, loading, loading. Okay, so we have our dashboard pieces there. Inside of Excel, I can also go into name regions and different things like that, so I can say, just show this chart or just show that chart. And I can build out these different pages and put them there. This is done using the Excel Web Access web part. So if I just come over here and I say edit the page, we're going to be able to go in and look at the web part. We see that it's the Excel Web Access web part, and then we can go in and edit the properties. So these are just two very quick things that we can do with working with data. When I was going about doing this, building these reports in Power View, it took like maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get these reports done and then to get them published back. So a very easy way. So if you guys haven't done that, I've linked into several different sessions about the new stuff that's coming out with Power View and different things like that, but incredibly powerful features that haven't been easy in the past, in my opinion, for end users to work with. Like pivot tables are pivot tables, but you kind of have to know what you're doing to go in and do them. You need a certain skill set. With Power View, it's a lot easier to drag and drop, and even if I get it wrong, it's very easy to figure out, oh, well, I probably just need to move these around or different things like that. So a very good experience, and something that I recommend from the Power User Stack of going in and putting this on your list of things in 2015 to start paying a little bit more attention to, because I think it will make things a lot easier. All right. So no, if you're using Excel and Excel services, as long as you're running SharePoint Enterprise, you can do it on-prem. The first dashboard that I showed, that's Office 365 only right now, and this is actually in beta. So I don't even know that I'd play with it now and then see what's coming. But the other stuff you should be able to do on-prem as well.
No, I was just going to say that we should repeat the question.
Oh, I'm
sorry.
horrible at that. Cool. All right, so that's kind of Power View. We're now going to switch over, and Asif is going to take us back.
Don't say about what, because I want to ask them about that.
I'm not going to say about what. Okay.
All right. So before we switch back even, you still have your screen showing?
I have my screen showing.
There was an application that came out. Man, I can't remember now exactly. I think it was 1997. We all loved it.
That's when I graduated high school, by the way. Sorry.
All right. I won't say how old I was at that time. But anyway, so I really liked that application quite a bit, and I built a lot of solutions using that application, right? But then along the way, it lost its luster. I felt it lost its purpose. I felt. I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody by saying that about the application I would talk about. But now it's making a comeback in a big way. Begins with an A. What's that? Yes. Who said that? Awesome.
How many people still cringe when we say that word? It's okay. This is a loving community.
You know, there was so we can go back now.
Which is it? 2? 1?
Yeah, actually, you can go to mine. Oh, yeah, this is it.
Okay, beautiful.
Where is it? Yeah, and actually I'll talk about this in a minute. Before that, I'll just go to Access here. You can see my screen, Access. Access is definitely making a comeback in a huge way. Microsoft is putting a lot of power, a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of money behind it. And not just the Access 2013 application, but especially the components that empower a lot of services and a lot of presentation online within SharePoint, right? If you've already talked about or if you've already seen demos for Access web apps, then I apologize. You might want to go ahead and check your email or something, because that's what I'm about to do right now. I'll talk about Access web apps. Okay, if you have not seen it, I think this will be a good jumpstart, a good thought-provoking thing in your mind, saying, you know what, I can do some really cool things with it. So that I word that that gentleman pointed out, the I, you know, that we don't no longer have it doesn't have a great future anymore, because InfoPad 2013, as we've been told, is the last version. A small component of what it could do before was making forms, let us conditionally change the data, format and stuff like that. Some of that stuff, reporting, things like that, you could do in here. It's a subset of it. It's not a replacement. It's a subset. I'm going to show you an example of how I see some of these features being helpful, and then you can make up your own mind. All right? So within Access 2013, anytime you see the globe now, that is actually pointing out that this is a web app. You got custom web app, you got all these different templates for web app, project management, asset tracking, issue tracking, etc. There's still the desktop ACCDB databases you can create as well. That's not what we want right now, though. I don't want a desktop app, I want a web app. When I click on, for example, let's do this one, project management. It's showing me a preview first, that here's what it's going to look like to begin with. I'm going to go ahead and change it to something more unique, something that I've not used in a demo before, Ignite Project Management. The location for it, as Jennifer was pointing out before as well, that a lot of stuff that we're doing is on premises and online, so this could be a location online, Office 365, SharePoint Online, or it could be your on-premises as long as Access Services is turned on and everything is enabled. Yeah? So let's see if I have... I do. Here's my URL for it. I'm going to grab this and throw this web location here. Click on Create. And this process takes about a minute, no matter how good of a connection I have. So because of that, I have the slide open to talk about some stuff for this. The great thing about this model is that it's not all access, right? You have Access 2013 as the design mechanism, as the changing and customizing your forms, your reports, and stuff like that. But the actual thing resides, or it's viewable, it's interactable, if that's a word, from SharePoint 2013 or Office 365. And then furthermore, SQL Server is the engine that actually holds all the data for it. So it's not going to be sitting in a SharePoint list. The data won't be sitting in an Access database that's in a document library or on your file share or something like that. It's actually in SQL Server, which in my mind it provides a lot better data integrity, right? So having said that, I believe it's almost ready. Let me show you. Here we go. Here's what it did for me. Let me see if I got this thing running. Yep, I do. Projects, employees, customer, tasks, all these tables are ready for me. If I go into any of these tables, I have the view, list, data sheet, and by status. I can go ahead and modify these views as well. So for example, I'll say, maybe I want to make some changes here. I'll click on Edit, go into it. As Jennifer pointed out before, we are going to be going a little bit faster than usual because we have a lot to cover, but a recording of all this stuff is available. Resources are also available on the slide deck, pointing to where the videos for this stuff is located. So in here, what I want to do is, first of all, I could move stuff around if I wanted to. I don't really, but I could. It's a little bit blocky in nature, but still very useful. At any of these data points, data controls, I can go ahead and change the data source, where it's coming from, what the name is, and all that good stuff. I can also change, I don't know if you could see this icon, it's the action icon, or what it does when I update this particular field. In fact, I'll do that for the priority field. I'll go here and say, you know what, let me change what happens when you update this priority field. So I'll click on Update. Now it's taking me into some pre-built actions, macros that I could do. In here, specifically what I'm going to do is, since the priority is always going to be high, medium, low, I'll go ahead and say, let me click on set property. The control name, this particular control name was priority combo box. Let me just start typing this in. Here we go. It showed me exactly the different controls that are available that begins with PRI in this case. I'll pick this one, maybe, if it lets me. Priority, here we go, priority combo box. Property that I want to change, it could be enable, visible, forecolor, back color, value itself. I'll just say, let's change the forecolor. And the value here, this is requesting a value that the forecolor property would understand. In this case, I need a hex value for it, which of course I have all the hex values memorized for all different colors. Just kidding, I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one, which is green. Throw this in there. And that's about it for right now. Click on save, close, and I'll save this one. And this green, by the way, means that now this action is live. All right, so there's something behind it. Awesome. In addition to this, if you wanted to, you could also change these action buttons if you wanted to. I'll go ahead and throw an example here. Plus, take this one. I'll change this to this one. This will be a fairly simple example, by the way. Warning you here. So this is the coolest thing, and I mean that in a non-cool way. I can't get to the OK button at the bottom because of the resolution.
It's a feature.
It's a feature, yeah. I keep on telling myself that. Here we go. I had to scroll down here. Anyway, so tooltip for it, on click, and once again I got some macros here. So here I can say, oh, maybe let me do a message box. Message box said, you know, we love clicking buttons, right? And I don't mean that figuratively, I mean that literally. But anyways, this is going to rattle somebody saying, hey, oh, okay, I shouldn't have clicked it maybe. So anyway, I saved it. I'm going to go ahead and close this thing over here, save this whole thing. And then what you're doing is you're launching the app, okay? So you're launching it to wherever that source or that place was that you had provided it. I'm going to click on Launch App. Hopefully it goes up there. And since it is pretty cloudy out there, I think it's going to work fast. What do you think?
Probably is.
Right, there you go. See, cloud helps. Cloud definitely helps. Anyway, so you got this icon right here which says, do you know what this button does? If not, why click it, right?
Because we're users.
Because we're users, we love clicking
buttons.
Excuse me. This is, of course, I'm not going to go through filling out the whole thing here, but you can fill out the project name, etc. This is a project management application. It is not, at least in my humble opinion, it is not a truly enterprise-wide solution that you're going to have for everybody in a big organization. Yeah. I don't think that's going to work. But it is really good for teams. It's really good for regions to get something going quickly, a custom web app. Let's see if this priority thing works. I don't know if you can tell, but it's green now. Can you tell? Yeah? Okay, good. I should have used red, but I can't remember the hex value for red right now. Anyway, so you got a project over here. Then you got, this thing is related to the customers right here. And there, I believe the owner, this field is the lookup for the employees right there. Once again, I won't be going deeper inside all these things, but you know, it's got all this hookup. Everything is there. Sure. Actually, discard this one. One more thing I want to show you is what about your existing data, right? You're going to say, what about my existing Access stuff? What about existing Excel data that I have? How do I bring that in, right? I'm sure this question goes through your mind, goes through my mind. Well, there is a way to import things. I can say I want a new table for this database. And then here I can go ahead and say, coming from Access, coming from Excel, etc. If I did press Access, keep in mind, please, that it says we will not import table relationships, calculated columns, validation rules, default values, and columns of certain legacy data types. So there's some limitation here. Please keep that in mind. I'm going to use just a simple Excel lookup here, or import here. Let's see if I have this. Jennifer's so much more organized in this thing than I am. Let's see if I can find this right place. Here it is. No, here's not. Here it is. Okay. So I'm going to go to this location, import a customer's Excel sheet. Okay. Now, just like you would expect, it asks you if the first row contains column headings. Here's actually your data. Next, it's processing it. Hang on. Okay. All right. And then, of course, I can change the data type if I wanted to before I can import it in. All the stuff that you would expect. The actual name of the table, since I already have a customer's tables, I'll call this resellers or something like that. You got finish. And that should be done. So what I'm effectively doing, of course, is importing all this data in a new table, which will once again go into SQL in the back end. It's not going into a spreadsheet. It's not going into a list or an Access database. Let me save this here, launch this whole thing, and just quickly show you what it looks like. Here it is, resellers, and there it is. Yeah? So a lot of good stuff you can do with it. We have a lot more to show you, so I'm going to move on over here, but please look at the resources that are on the slide. Yeah, you can go ahead and flip back if you like. And look into it deeper and see if this solves your solution or not. I can definitely tell you, and I'm sure you heard the same thing, that Microsoft is putting a lot of power behind developing this thing further in the cloud and on premises. So this will get even better and better and better. Yes, sir.
If you're trying to import your Excel sheet that's got functionality built into it, it doesn't import into the Access web, how do you go about reinventing that functionality?
So some of the stuff that you will have in an Excel, things like user-defined functions and things like that, if you try to import that in, will it come in, first of all? And if not, how do I recreate some of that functionality within Access is your question, right? Good question. Next question? So, as I mentioned before, there are things which are limited in nature right now. You do have macros in Access, so you can go ahead and create some functionality using that. It will not bring it in exactly how it was working in Excel, but it will bring in data at this point right now, and then you have to recreate that using some macros. On premises with
no coding, so formulas are allowed.
no coding formulas are allowed. As I mentioned before in the customization continuum, there are limits of what we can do.
Remember when we said we're in a transition period?
It will definitely get there. There's also things that I would love to have, for example, a better branding story or more workflows and things like that.
Yeah.
Rules engine like we could do in InfoPath. And I believe all this stuff will come. Currently, things are limited in nature. But thank you for that question.
All right.
All right, go for it.
Happier topics. Let's move to automation and workflow. So what we want to talk about here is the ability to take every opportunity we can to try to automate things for users. Now this can be something as simple as, and some of the demos we're going to show, something as simple as a list value is set at a certain value, so I'm going to assign it to someone based on the value that's been set. So very simplistic, logical, if this, then do this type of workflow. And then we've also got things like notifications. So how often have you wanted to send a weekly reminder notification so somebody fills in their status report before they leave for the weekend? I'm that person that never fills in their status report, so these things would be helpful to me. So there's different things like that that we can do. So inside of, going with the thing that they want to make things simple and not make it confusing, when we went from, that was sarcasm, when we went from SharePoint 2010 workflows, now we have 2013 workflows, and it's two different workflow bases running. So you could actually be in 2013 running 2010 workflows or running 2013 workflows, and each of the different workflow sets has a different set of actions and commands that they can do. So there's some different things that you can do, and some have benefits over the others. Both should work on-prem and in Office 365 as long as you have workflow services running in your 2013 environment. So when you go to create a new workflow, if you don't see the 2013 workflows, you need to talk to your system administrators and get that installed to get those running. So Asif is going to do a quick talk through of some of the new features that come while I get ready to do our first demo.
I guess I'm going to do a quick talk on that. All right. So how many people have been using workflows already since SharePoint Designer 2007 for SharePoint specifically? All right. So SharePoint Designer 2007 workflows, which I taught on at that time, it's like every time I taught that class, I'm like, man, I wish it was better. It's like, oh, there was one thing, for example, that just bothered me so much personally. There was a button missing, right? You know what I'm talking about? You know which button? Nobody? Undo? Save button. There was no way to save those workflows. I'm like, okay, so there's publish, and then there's nothing. Check for errors and publish. So you were expected to go ahead and fill the whole thing out, make the whole workflow, and do not go home before it's done. You have to publish it. There was no save functionality. Anyway, so we got around it, throwing errors in there, and then it clicked on publish, and it said, all right, well, I'm going to save it for you, but I can't publish it because it got errors. Anyway, there were things like that that just bothered all of us so much. Then SharePoint Designer 2010, we had better workflows and all that stuff. 2013, the story gets much, much better. As far as workflows goes, I'm so pleased with all the stuff we got. Still, there's room for improvement, which there always is, but let's talk about some of that stuff, yeah? First thing, stages. The stages functionality really makes the steps come alive. Before we had steps, but steps were not really logical entities that you can go back and forth from. They were just grouping mechanisms, right? But in stage, you can say, all right, let's go ahead and do this particular thing. For example, it's provisioning an equipment, a piece of equipment to somebody. And if that has not happened, at the end, check for blah, 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 go back to the stage. Or if it has happened, but something else happened, go to this stage. It's good to have that feature, to be able to loop through things, right? Everybody likes looping. And be able to have real logic in our workflow, so it's not just sequential, top-down, done. Anyway, so stages, awesome concept. Visual designer, hopefully we'll get a chance to show you that as well. Being able to visualize your workflows, not just text-based, but also Visio-based, pretty pictures, and even beyond pretty pictures, you can go ahead and go to the boxes and change stuff around. Hopefully we'll get a chance to show you that as well. New task actions. I really love the task actions that are there right now, which lets me modify the email that will get sent to the person, which lets me modify the ability to say this particular task action does not block the whole workflow. For example, no matter if the person actually has done this or not, let's move on and do other stuff in the workflow. Things like that were just bothersome and not intuitive, I think, to people when they had that before. Anyway, web services. This is where things get a little complicated for some people who are not coming from a development background, is what I've noticed at least. So being able to call web services directly through a workflow, bringing information back either from the outside or through a reseller or partner or things like that, I think is awesome. But it is fairly complicated. If you are brave, to go ahead and jump into it, I suggest definitely try some examples. We have an example in one of my demos here later after Jennifer does hers. And it's really good stuff. But it does get complicated. It does have a lot of steps to it. Oh, I already went to loops. Okay, loops. Can't say that often enough. Having the ability to loop things until a certain condition is true or certain times, very, very good to have. And my personal favorite is copy-paste.
Yes.
Even though it's not as complicated, without being able to copy-paste your actions, conditions, stages, steps, or the whole workflow from one place to another, it was just really painful. So it's like, when iPhone first came out, it didn't have copy-paste in there. And everybody's like, oh, how can you not have a copy, whatever. Same thing over here. It was just annoying until now. So I'm so glad. Thank you, Microsoft. We have that. Moving on forward. You can still make 2010 workflows. And you can make 2013 workflows. Both of those in SharePoint 2013. If you're making 2010 type of workflows, you don't need the Workflow Manager piece, which those of you who are not aware, Workflow Manager is a separate install that you have to do, that an IT pro has to do. And then Workflow Manager, which runs in its own farm, provides the workflow services to SharePoint. So Workflow Manager 1.0 is a requirement, and it brings all those cool things that I talked about to SharePoint. When you open up SharePoint Designer, which is the main way of making power user type of SharePoint workflows, you see you can make 2010 workflows or 2013 workflows. All right? And that's just the two ribbons that come up depending on which workflows you make. One quick thing about that also, when you do migrate and your 2010 workflows come forward, you do have the functionality to go ahead and copy-paste with those existing workflows, which is awesome.
All right.
Let's see. And yeah, go for it.
Demo time. All
Demo
right.
time.
So this is where it gets fun, because we have got 10 minutes to walk you through 3 workflow examples that I would typically, I think it's unfair when they give us this topic and say you have to cover these 5 things. And it's like, I can talk about those 5 things for a day apiece.
Yeah.
So we're going to rush through them pretty quickly. The first one we have is the very simple one. So we're going to just go over some of the basics of the workflows. And this is an example for somebody who's just getting started with workflows. And then Asif is going to share with us one of his more complex ones with web services. So you're going to kind of get to see both of them. But the concept that we have here is we have a list of sales data. And if it's above a certain point, we want to assign it to Jennifer Mason. If it's below that point, we want to assign it to Mark Anderson. So we just want this to do simply. We don't want users to have to do the assignment themselves. We want to do it for them whenever the item is changed or a new one is created. So we are going to open up SharePoint Designer, and we're going to open our site. Once we open our site, we're going to be able to click on the workflows. And if I wanted to create a new list workflow, I could come over here and I could pick the list that I was going to be creating it on. And it's going to come up. I'm going to give it a name. Oops, I'm going to not click in the right spot, make a mess. Okay. All right, I'm not quite sure what's going on with my keyboard. We're going to try again. Okay, there we go. We have a name. My keyboard is going spastic, so we're going to call it G. And this is where we can, whatever. This is where we can pick what type of workflow are we doing. Are we doing a 2010 or are we doing a 2013? I'm going to say I'm doing a 2013, and I'm going to click OK. And here's where I have my stages of what I can do. So the idea with this now is that we have commands and actions. So we're going to have conditions that let us say if a value equals or if it was modified in a certain period. Or we're going to have actions that we want to do based on those conditions. SharePoint 2013 workflow and SharePoint Designer kind of is what it is. And what I mean by that is if you want to have an action that's not one of these, you have to do something custom to get that action in there or to do a development project to do it. So it's pretty straightforward, the actions that you have to do. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to open up the workflow that I have. I see that it's running when an item is created. I can manually do it, or I can do it when something's modified. So those are the three choices of when we can pick when workflows run, and you can have multiple workflows associated with the list. So I'm going to come over here and say edit the workflow. And we see that I've just got a simple if statement. If current amount is greater than 50,000, set assign to Jennifer Mason, and then send an email to the sales executive team. So a scenario like this, oh, it's a big deal. We want to notify people that they're there. So if I click on the send an email, what I see is that I've got a 2. That's a distribution list. It's a group inside of SharePoint, the sales executives. I'm also doing sending an email to the person it's assigned to. And I can come over here and I can enter in the text that I want. When I enter in the text, I also have this concept of adding or changing lookups. This is going to let me pull values from other places inside of SharePoint. So I can go, a lot of these say current item because I'm just pulling it from the current item. But this is also where I can get very complex and pull items from other lists based on data and different things like that. So the idea behind this is I just want to do the simple step and send some notifications. Why that's showing up there? Okay, we're going to say okay. If it's less than that, we're going to just assign it to Mark Anderson. The assign piece here, I'm just seeing the people that are in my SharePoint site, and I have different accounts and who I can add there. Okay, so I'm going to publish that, and then once I do it, if I go back to my SharePoint list, no idea what is going on. Now is the perfect time for IE to crash. All right, we're going to go with it. All right, we're going to come over here, go back to this one. All right, so now when I'm in here, if I was to change one of these list items, let's see the one here that's assigned to Mark. If I come over here and I say edit the item, I'm going to be able to change it to here. Maybe it's 400,000 if my keyboard would work. All right. We're going to let Asif switch and do his demo, and I'm going to play with my keyboard here. I think that's the best way to do this. All right. You are number
1, I believe.
1. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, keyboards get kind of funky sometimes. I've noticed that too. Okay. We'll go deep inside here. Now, before I jump into this semi-complicated looking thing over here, let me tell you a true story. this particular workflow, someone came to me afterwards in a session saying, you know what, I actually did this workflow a couple of times on my own, following a video that you produced showing exactly how to do it. And then this guy was a health professional in the health industry. He didn't tell me exactly what he does, but in the health industry at least. He's like, I was able to make a real world process using some of these processes that you showed in here, and I'm so thankful, you know. And it just made me personally feel awesome, because we're not just doing technology for the sake of technology. I hope you agree with that. And you know, when I see impact in fields that I care about personally, I'm sure you do as well, it's awesome. So anyway, having said that, this particular scenario is not a super complex one. It's not even something that you might not even do this particular thing, which I'll explain in a minute. But having said that, if you go through this a couple of times, you'll get ideas in your head as, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And hopefully that's helpful to you. If you do find it helpful, I would love feedback or email or something saying, hey, Asif, you know, you did this. Here's what I'm using it for. I love those stories. It just motivates me quite a bit at least. All right. Having said that, this particular thing uses, first, it calls in a web service, and it provides an actual RSS feed. In this case, a blog feed. It pulls back the information that's coming in through the RSS. It changes it through JSON. You guys know what JSON is? Getting a little complicated here, but the JavaScript object notation, right? And once it grabs that, it actually iterates through it, loops through all that stuff, and it says, all right, let me pull out the fields that I care about. In a blog, for example, you care about title, you care about abstract, you care about the actual link to the blog so somebody can get back to that blog, and maybe the content as well if you want to show the whole thing directly in a list or something. I pull all that stuff back, log for myself. So you know what? I'm going to actually go through some of these things so you know what I'm saying. Here we go. So this first one right here is the one that's calling the web service, right? It's calling a web service which accepts an RSS feed in this case, pulls in data back. Next thing over here, right here, is saying get information, specific information from this JSON that's coming back, throw it into a variable called WS response. And that's a dictionary variable, by the way. A dictionary variable is where you can store dictionary type of data, name value pairs and stuff like that. Anyway, count items in the actual response that's coming in, log a statement just so we know as the workflow designers how far the actual workflow got. It's always good to log a statement. And then you'll go ahead and set an index to 0 because we'll need that index later to use. Once again, if you're looking at this for the first time, you're like, what is he talking about? And that's okay. A lot of these kind of things do make sense once you get your hand dirty and do it. And you can do this pretty easily just by following that video that I'm talking about, which is in the additional resources slide, and just getting an Office 365 trial for 30 days or something like that. So after calling web service and going to this dictionary variable, throwing stuff in there, now you got your data that's ready and available. What do you do with it? Whatever that data is. It could be coming from Amazon. It could be coming from your reseller or partner or whatever else. You loop through it. I want to loop through my data that I have. In this case, the count number of times, because I know that that's how many items I have in my, in this case, blog. Once you count, once you loop through it, you go ahead and say, all right, my first blog entry, I'm going to throw it into this list. Second blog entry, I'm going to throw it into this list, and that's what this is doing, throwing into a list. Yeah. So after it does all that stuff, it increments itself. Index, which I set to 0 before, it increments that. And after that, once everything is done, ends the workflow. Once again, you can find this whole thing from scratch to how this is built in the additional resources slide. Check it out. If you find it useful, let me know. I believe Jennifer is ready with some of the stuff that she wanted to do before.
Can you?
So we'll go back to her.
There is really nothing more worse for a presenter than having to reboot their machine in the middle of a presentation, but the keyboard's working now. Gotta love it. So I was showing off some of the workflows, and as you can see the difference between the one that Asif was doing and the one that I was doing, we have a little set of code, and then he had a massive amount of code.
I wouldn't call this code, though.
It's a lot of line items. Maybe line items. Okay. Maybe not code. Maybe all configuration. Right. A lot. It was a lot more complex. Very powerful, though, and very awesome to do it. And so what happens is when the workflow is running, the last one that we were going to show was the site workflow that's running. it's doing the same thing. So this kind of is a combination of the first one we showed, the one that Asif just showed, and the one that I'm showing here it's a weekly reminder. So it's got a stage where you're going in and doing it, and it has a loop where it's just repeating the same actions over and over again. And so the trick, I think, with learning these workflows and going through these pieces is we could talk for days and days and days and days and probably still not hit every scenario that every business would hit. And the idea is my son likes to play with a lot of little Legos. And, you know, a little bag of Legos together doesn't equal anything, but then all of a sudden he'll come up and it's like this little monkey that's eating a banana. And so it's the idea of pulling together all of the pieces and understanding what are the actions that we're trying to do and how do those translate to the business. So if someone's just getting started with workflow, what I like to tell them to do is to set up a test site and start going through the actions and just saying, okay, what does this action actually do? What's the outcome of this? What can I get from this? And as you get familiar with all of these actions and the different conditions that you can do, then you can start to apply it to these business scenarios. And when you hear these business scenarios, you can make that connection between the two of how they work. So to kind of wrap up the workflow and so we can move on to some of the other pieces, I wanted to show some of the emails that are coming out of it. And so both of us talked about how you have emails inside of your workflow. This is the reminder workflow email that comes up that says, okay, here's your weekly reminder. Let's do this. This is running off of a site workflow. So site workflows are actually stored in the site contents of a site. And we have a button here for the site workflows, and we can click on that, and we can see all of the workflows that are running for the site. Site workflows came out in 2010, SharePoint, but to be perfectly honest, I could never even come up with what would be a good demo to do of the site workflows because they didn't really seem to have any very powerful things that I could do. When 2013 introduced looping, that's when you can just have a workflow that's associated with the site that can run on a loop or run on a cycle to go through the different pieces. So we see that this workflow is running, and if I click on it and go into the history, we're going to see that the workflow is going to pause, that it's going to run, and then an email has been sent, and the workflow will now pause till 5:13. So it kicked off this morning. It's going to run, and it's going to go. It's going to wait till the 13th, and then it's going to go again. So these are just some of the concepts and ideas of things that you guys can do with workflows. Again, we have all the resources there so you can kind of follow along and do those different things. Do you want to show off the designer quickly?
I forgot about this thing. I think it's very important to just quickly.
Show that one quickly.
And then we'll do the other stuff that, that's a white elephant in the room. We'll talk about that. Anyway, really quickly, you have a complex workflow like this. A lot of us like to see actually what does it look like? What is the first point? What is the end point? Views, visual designer. This in particular will generate the pretty pictures. Actually, I don't want to call it pretty pictures. This is actual workflow. When you think about workflow, you think about this kind of stuff, right? What are the actions taking place? When is one taking place? When is the other one taking place? How is the condition coming into play and all that stuff? It's very important to look at that. Plus, you can change stuff right here as well. Change the properties if you wanted to, right there. The caveat to having this available is you need to have Visio 2013 Professional on your machine to be able to do that. Okay? Currently, what you're looking at, this is not Visio application. This is SharePoint Designer still. It just uses the Visio components that are in my laptop to give that capability within SharePoint Designer. Very, very cool stuff. So please do check it out. Once again, quickly, going from views, text-based designer or visual designer will take you back and forth.
All right.
All good.
All right, so now we're going to move to the white elephant in the room, InfoPath 2013. We're going to cover this one pretty quickly. Asif and I were talking before we got started that we could literally just have tons of passionate conversation about this one. So we're going to share the Microsoft vision. We're kind of give just a brief highlight of what you should be doing now if you're looking at doing forms, what the future looks like a little bit, and then we're going to just kind of move on to some of the other examples.
No, we're not. I'm going to be talking about it until the end.
In the end, and we talk about it.
I'm going to be talking about it until the end.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So InfoPath 2013 is still supported. It's going to be supported until 2023. And InfoPath Form Services is going to be supported in SharePoint 2016 on premises. What that basically means is that it's going to continue at the same pace. It's going to be revved up. So you will have InfoPath 2016, but it's not going to be necessarily any new features or any products. So they have still come out and said, we are not making a further investment on InfoPath. We're making other investments and we're having other tools. The first of those tools was supposed to be Fossil, but they have decided to remove that from the roadmap with hopefully an update coming later. So there's a lot of silence in this area that's still kind of continuing. And the recommendation moving forward is that you continue to use InfoPath or you look for alternate solutions. So what I like to say is if you're... Yeah.
Come on.
But that's what it is. So you can continue to use InfoPath. I'd like to say a lot of things that you can do inside of InfoPath are in essence throwaway. If I just have a simple SharePoint list and I'm customizing it, if I lose that customization, I still have the list, I still have the back-end data, it's not going to be the end of the world when we upgrade. If I have very complex, business critical, if I have something that's going to impact the entire organization, I'm likely going to not even start in InfoPath. If I don't have any forms out there right now, I'm not even going to really start with InfoPath. I'm probably going to go look at a third-party solution or look at doing something custom. If I have InfoPath in there already, I'm probably going to just keep chugging along until I get different solutions. So
yeah,
it's painful. I know this. But I think we can, that's really the answer to it. I know that's probably, is that anyone's answer that they wanted to hear here? No. I'm sorry.
Public,
yes.
Let's go back to public folders.
Yes.
See, the reality is, and I'm sorry, I know
I
was not going to say anything about InfoPath, but I have to, I can't keep it inside me. I've written curriculum on it, written books on it. I've taught so much on InfoPath over the years that I have to say just one quick word on it. There's no other InfoPath session at this conference, right? So 1 quick minute. If you are, like Jennifer said, using InfoPath, our sincere opinion is that you should continue using InfoPath. It's a great application, and there is no alternative unless you're willing to pay for it with one of the awesome vendors which are out there at the expo hall. They have great solutions. It costs money. If that's not an option, continue using InfoPath. InfoPath is great. If you're starting out from scratch, my opinion right now, let's not use InfoPath, okay? Just because we don't know the certain... I should qualify this saying that what is your timeline for how long you're going to use this particular process or this particular form. If it's a short term, then definitely. If it's long term, might not be the best idea. Okay, I'll keep my mouth shut.
All right, so we are down to our last about 15 minutes. I'm actually going to skip over the InfoPath demo because I don't want to get tied up doing that. We can do that at the end, and we're going to go into the other two because I think you're going to get more value out of those. So I'm going to make the executive decision because I have the mic and the pointer.
She's the boss.
And we're going to let, Asif is going to jump into showing us his search demo that he has, and then we can loop back to the InfoPath.
Number one.
Right.
There it is. Okay, here's my Office 365 site. What I'm about to show you right now works equally well in on-premises environment as well. Traditionally, when we think about search, we think about Bing, Google, that kind of stuff, right? You go and actually you do the search. You guys remember how search used to be before these giants came along and changed the whole thing? And it was bad, right? Anyway, so we're dependent on it. But I feel that we need to go even further beyond that search that we're talking about, which is a user understanding and knowing where should I start. That text box that I have, I fill it in with some query, and then I go from there. What if they don't know what they should be looking for? What if you want to show them some specific information regarding, let's say, HR or stock options or something that's relevant to them, and you would just want them to go to a pre-designated place, and there is where all the updated information that's in your organization should already be there. And that's the search-based solution that I want to talk about here. Having said that, once again, you can do this on-premises or online. I'm going to go ahead and make a new page. Excuse me. This page, we'll call it Ignite Search Create. Okay, starting with a blank canvas here. I'll click on Insert, go to Web Part, and the one I'm looking for is the Search Web Part. There's a bunch of them here: Refinement, Search Box, Navigation, and Search Results. Search Results is the one that I want to use right now, so I'll go ahead and click on Search Results, click on Add, and it will throw this beautiful looking web part. We're done. What do you think? I'm just kidding.
It's everything you ever wanted.
Let's go ahead and configure this, right? So Edit Web Part. If you have not clicked on this particular button, I would suggest definitely click on this button when you get a chance. Really cool stuff happens when you click on this button. So I'll click on the Change Query button over here. This gives me a lot of power as to the kind of data that I want to show to my users. Building a query. You can build it from scratch directly by typing stuff in the query text if you know what you're doing. If not, we got keyword filters, property filters right there to help us build our query. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and, actually, you know what, I'll keep this here, which is the search box query. You know what, I'll delete this, start from scratch, just so you know how to get this back. Query from the search box. This particular thing right here, if I clicked on Add Add Keyword Filter, it brings the search box query back here. And that's just saying that if somebody typed in the following word, whatever I type in right now, here's what they're going to get. Contoso. Test the query. This is for my particular site, and it brought back 493 results. Great. I can stop here, or I could do more. Let's do Select Property Filter. This is just a start right here. This is not it. You click on Show All Managed Properties, and it gives you a complete list of all the different managed properties that are out there. About Me, Account, Manager, Content Type, Description, Department. Lots of different managed properties that are available. What I want to do is go to, in my case, just File Type. So this one right here, File Type, contains, equals, whatever you want to choose for the operand here. And the value here could be coming from maybe a different site. It could be coming from maybe the URL as a query parameter. It could be coming from a session variable. It could be coming from anywhere you want it to come from, or you can just choose manual, which is what I'm going to do right now for this particular demo. So I'll do manual value, and the value I'm going to provide it is going to be pptx. Property filter. So this is what it put in, by the way, file type : pptx. You can definitely type it in directly if you like. Test query. Maybe. Come on, Cloud. Okay. Here we go. So 25 results, which are PowerPoint documents. All right. But what I want to do is a little bit put the onus in the hands of the user when they're coming in, that you get all these Contoso results, and now you go ahead and refine some of these results as you need based on author, based on file type, and stuff like that. So I'll actually take this stuff out. Make sure my query is still valid. Come on, really? It's like I have to click out and click back in. That's a feature. That's a new feature. I didn't even know about this. New feature. First time. Okay. And okay. Here we go. Here's all different results, right? What I'll do here is I'll structure this page a little bit by clicking on Insert, putting in a table of a couple of columns, take this search results web part, move it in this column, go over here, click on Insert, and by the way, you can do whatever formatting you want for this thing, but I'll move on. Insert web part, and then choose this refinement web part. This will auto detect my search results web part. Here it is, and it will connect to it, which it did right now. It's got refiners, which are by default available. You can change the refiners also by going into the edit web part. I won't do that right now, but anyway, it's showing me result type, authors, and modified date. When I click OK, or when I save this page now, as a user, when they come to this page, they can say, all right, here's all my Contoso results. Let me look at all the PowerPoint results. Ah, okay. And as you know, a PowerPoint web app lets me also see a lot of good stuff directly within the metadata within the PowerPoint. That's great. Now I want to see stuff from Asif Rahmani. Actually, I've created most of the stuff, so let me click on somebody else. Maybe not. What did I just do? Sorry, I clicked on something else. It just disappeared on me. Oh my God. Really? Here we go. Okay. So all. And then I'll select Garth Fort. And here you go, a subset of what Garth Fort has produced. Anyway, that's the gist of what this gives me. There's also a search content web part, I believe, and others as well. Definitely play around with it, get some good...
I've done some things like with project sites where I'll show me all the project documents or show me all the presentations, sales, different things like that. So a lot of different scenarios I've seen that type of thing.
One caveat I'm going to put in there, because some people don't understand this going up into search, that, you know, let's say Sarah from HR department goes out and throws a document into a library, right, which this is supposed to index. And Jim goes and does this, goes to this page and says, I don't see Sarah's document. And it's only been 2 minutes after she has put it in. You know why, right? The indexing has not happened, the crawl has not happened. So it is search dependent. As long as users, I know you understand it, but as long as your users understand this as well, because all of us are looking for instant gratification these days, now. You know, so as long as they understand the expectation, this will give them great results. I would say even go beyond what I've showed you right now and look into display templates and how you can take this data and make it look the way you want it to look, not just the way it looks by default.
Awesome.
Jennifer.
All right. Well, we are going to close out the presentation with 2 more demos that I have that take this back to the simple. This is 2 features that I absolutely love in 2013, but I like to show them in sessions because I think they get overlooked a lot and people actually don't know that they exist. So I like to show them off so that people can use them. So,
can I just say that, folks, if you have, some of you are leaving, please fill out an eval. That helps us a lot as presenters. We'd really appreciate it.
Awesome. So the thing I want to show first is how many people have ever tried to hide the quick launch in a version of SharePoint 2007 and 2010? And how many people got angry at how difficult that was to do? I'm one of them. In 2013, when you go in to change the design of a SharePoint site, so I'm going to click on Seattle versus Oslo here. That's the demo I'm doing. When you go in to change the design of a SharePoint site, there's something called the site layout. There's 2 options there. They gave us very informative names, Seattle and Oslo. Pretty sure that has to do with where the development team sat that made them. But Seattle is what you're used to. Quick launch, global navigation on every page. Oslo takes the quick launch, moves it to the global navigation, and removes the quick launch off the page for the entire site. So by doing this, and I'm going to say try it out, and then I'm going to just say accept it, I have hidden the quick launch in 3 clicks from every page in my site, and I did not have to do a content editor web part and paste code.
Yeah.
Because that's how we did it in previous versions. This is what, yes, I knew it! My favorite demo. This gives me real estate everywhere. It also carries through, so any of those pages that I already showed, when I click on it and open it, look, my dashboard is now taking up the full page. Yeah. One of my favorite things in 2013, but also I believe because of the way it's named, one of the things that most people look at that and go, I don't even know what that is, so I'm not going to click it. Yeah. But it hides the quick launch. So it's beautiful. I love it. And then the final demo we wanted to leave you guys with, as we're running out of time, leaving some time for questions, is my second favorite thing in 2013. We've kind of talked about our users a lot. They like to click buttons. What do they like more than buttons? Images, right? So a button with an image, that's like you've just made the, the glory moment for them. Promoted links, here we're going to click on it. You know how you have a SharePoint site and it says getting started and it has all of those different boxes with things that you can do? That's based off of a SharePoint list template called promoted links. Because it's just a SharePoint list template, I can come over here to site contents and I can add any of them to the site. So I can come over here and I can go promoted and I'm going to get promoted links. What this is going to do is give me a list where I can go in now and add my own promoted links. So I have one that I already put there called shortcuts. This is called the tile view. So it's a special view that they give for us. And notice that when I hover over any one of these, I get a title, I get a description, and there's an image there. These are really then just links to something else. If I come over here and I change the list view, and I go to all promoted links, I'm going to see it in the standard list view that I'm used to seeing. And we see that I have a background image that I'm pointing to. I have a link that I'm going to. I get to say, am I doing it in the same page? And in what order do I want them displayed? Okay. What do we love about SharePoint List? You can put them on any page as a web part. So now I have, with just a couple of clicks, adding a few items, I can go to any page in SharePoint and drop this button navigation. That's another feature that just makes my life easier as someone who's building solutions, because, I mean, I get all of it. I get buttons, I get text, I get things we can click with images. So like I can come over here to the home page. I can say edit the page. Just very simply, I can say insert a web part. It's going to be one of my lists. I will go to shortcuts. I will say add. And in a matter of just a couple of minutes, we've gotten rid of the quick launch navigation and in essence replaced it with image navigation. And we can also have several of these lists inside of a site. So we've actually built a couple of, we've talked about HR solutions where there's different processes they have to go. I've built different solutions where I've used this as my navigation across the top and say step 1. It takes them to a page to have everything they need for step 1, step 2. And it goes through and takes them through all of the things. So you can really build some powerful navigation without having to write any lines of code. So this was another one that they kind of snuck it in 2013. One of my favorite features, though, because it provides a lot of value. So I kind of wanted to end out and showing you some of those two, I mean, very simple things, but simple isn't really awesome if you don't know it exists. And so going in and knowing it exists, now you guys can use these and add them to the site. So, awesome.
Awesome.